بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم جميعا. Good morning everyone, and welcome to the Hamdan bin Mohammed Award showcase, where we will be presenting about the experiences of the winners from the award last year. My name is Khalid Hamdi. I am the vice chair of the jury panel for the Hamdan Award. So I had the pleasure and the torture of having to read the applications of these winners here, and I was very happy to read those and very impressed by the work they did. And it's a really good opportunity for us all to be here to listen to what they have to say about their experience and how they applied and how they won the award. I think you're all here to hear how they won so you can win next year, inshallah. The award is very sizable, and I was involved in it from the very beginning. I used to work for RTA for the past 15 years, and now I don't work in the RTA anymore, but I'm here to chair this session and to introduce the people who will be honoring us by speaking today. The award, as you know, is one of the most prestigious awards in the field of project management. In terms of the idea, fostering innovation, it's the only award that fosters or rewards innovation in the field. In terms of the sizable prizes that can be won if you apply and win, so it is worth it. You have seen the winners today. They're all from around the world, so it's not biased in any way or how. And it covers diverse fields. I think we have today 3 people from 3 diverse fields speaking, from the airline industry, from construction, as well as from telecom. So all these 3 people will tell us about their experience, and I give each of them approximately half an hour to speak. And we will not open the floor for questions after every presentation, so note down your questions. Once the 3 of them are finished, I will put him here, and you can ask them whichever you want. So our first speaker is John Donohoe. He is the PMO Director and Change Management Director of Star Alliance Germany. Star Alliance, it's a major airline group. I think the mother company or the biggest company there is Lufthansa. Am I right? United is part.
United, Singapore, 28 airlines.
28 airlines. Yeah. I think Egypt Air is even one of them. So, yeah. Well, he comes from the U.S., but he's based in Germany, I think.
That's correct.
Yeah. And he's responsible for the enterprise-wide portfolio management and organizational change management and project delivery. Last year, he was the winner of the Innovative PMO Manager Award for innovation in the area of strategic alignment management. He will speak to us today about the 3 opportunities for the PMO to lead in a disruptive world. John, please.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to begin by telling you a story about a conversation that I had just a few days ago with a colleague that I haven't seen in many, many years. And what we talked about is, we talked about her projects, because she also works in a large multinational from the United States. And I said to her, I said, "How's your projects going?" And she said to me, "We're going through a major transformation. And we even have an Agile Center of Excellence." And I, as a PMO manager, I said, "That sounds great. How's the PMO handling that transformation?" And she looked at me and she said, "Well, the PMO is not part of our Agile Center of Excellence. In fact, the PMO and the Agile Center of Excellence, they really don't get along very well." And she said, "You see, our PMO, they're really concerned, it seems, more about process and procedures, and they really don't understand really the business needs to get projects delivered quicker. and in a more agile way. And I tell you this story this morning because it reminds me of our own story, and I think a lot of PMOs, how in the age of transformation that every organization is doing some sort of transformation, how we kind of look for our sense of identity to say, where do we fit in this more agile, this more lean world? And so if there's anything that I would suggest that you take away from my conversation this morning, it is this: that in the world of lean and agile and digital and transformation, that every PMO and project manager really must adapt and evolve and be very, very innovative in the way we deliver our value. And that may scare some of you, but this is pure Darwinism. It's about evolving, adapting to the environment we find ourselves in. In fact, I had a conversation on the airplane on the way over with a gentleman from Google, and he called it digital Darwinism. I haven't heard that term before, but I can certainly relate to it. And so what I want to talk about is some of those things may scare you, but I've got very, very good news for all of us. We're all sitting here today because our ancestors over the millennium have been very, very good at doing exactly that, adapting and evolving. It's in our DNA. We're really good at it. And so I have further good news. In the age of disruption, there comes opportunities. And so what I want to talk about today are 3 opportunities for every PMO. Even though we realize that every PMO is different and has a different charter and a different culture, and I get that. But I hope there's a couple things that you may be able to take away today that you can relate to your PMO or your project managers that will help you to adapt and evolve to the world of disruption that we find ourselves in. So just a couple things about me. Yes, I am a director of an enterprise project management office and change management at an organization called Star Alliance, which is an alliance of 28 airlines around the world. And I'm based in Frankfurt, Germany. And I have been fortunate and grateful that I was able to win the PMO Innovation Award last year. And it's my privilege to share my experience with you today. I also have worked with PMI this year on a couple podcasts and being in their network magazine. But one of the things that I'm passionate about are portfolio management and strategy execution. Now let's come back to those 3 opportunities. They are to be able to have PMOs help bridge the strategy execution gap. I heard of a lot of speakers yesterday talk and reference this. And the reality is that every PMO has an opportunity to help bridge that gap. And the efficiency and the ability of an organization to execute their strategy is the difference between those industry leaders and those lowest performers. That's how important it is, and PMOs have an extremely important part in helping to bridge that gap. The second opportunity I want to talk about is how we mature and evolve our value delivery, given that we have more complex projects today with many, many more unknowns. And the third opportunity is for us as PMOs and project managers to help drive and lead the people side of change, which is happening and transforming all of our organizations and is vital to the success of all of our projects. So let's talk about the first opportunity, bridging the strategy execution gap. I ask you to take a step back and just let's understand the value of what execution is. The reality is that any organization can have a rock solid strategy, but the reality is unless you're able to execute it, you literally have no value at all. That's how important it is. And so executing strategy is vital. And if I think about, in the most simplest terms, and about executing strategy, what is it? It's taking an organization from where you're at to where you're trying to go. Very simple, right? And how do companies grow their business? It's by executing projects and programs, right? It's projects and programs, particularly those ones that are strategically important, that are going to help drive those KPIs and execute the strategy. So I want to show you two views of what the opportunity is for PMOs, particularly when we talk about executing strategy. But before I say that, I want to just acknowledge the fact that executing strategy involves a lot of different dimensions. And I want to talk about particularly the important one about executing projects and the opportunity for PMOs. So the two views that I want to share with you today are one from CEOs from Brightline, and I think I've heard some references to that over the last couple of days. And Brightline, if you don't know, is a PMI-led consortium dedicated to examining exactly this problem, executing strategy. And the other view that I want to share with you today comes from PMI's Pulse of the Profession. And that is really from PMI practitioners and senior executives. And if you look at those results of their surveys from both of those views, the results are very, very similar, but they're very alarming at the same time. When I think about up to 40% of all of those strategically important projects fail to reach their goals, and a shocking 20 to 28% of all those strategic initiatives, they fail outright. That's a huge opportunity and a huge, we need to be able to do better. So my question is, what can PMOs do to help bridge that gap? The first one is, let's acknowledge what the strategy is. Let's acknowledge and understand what are those KPIs, what are those key metrics to be able to drive the strategy. And if you look at a current McKinsey study, only 10% of employees understand the strategy or even know about it, and only 40% of all managers understand the strategy. So first of all, it's for PMOs to become more strategic mindset and understand what the bigger picture is and why we exist and what we're trying to do as an organization. And keeping that strategic mindset in mind, it's about having a more holistic view of us selecting projects and being able to execute them with the overall strategy in our minds. And one of the things that PMOs do best is, particularly enterprise PMOs, is about engagement, collaboration across all the business areas. And one of the key value drivers of executing strategy is making sure everybody's aligned and understands where we're going. And PMOs have a big role to be able to play in that. Additionally, you may have heard that we want to limit work in progress. But PMOs, particularly enterprise PMOs, they are uniquely positioned because they sit between the demand for projects, the portfolio, and the resource utilization of the projects themselves. So they have a tremendous opportunity to maximize what we call the throughput through the product development pipeline, rather than being really good managers and trying to maximize the resource utilization, because that's not limiting work in progress, and that's actually slowing down the high value projects going out that we're trying to get into the marketplace. And finally, every organization, and PMO in particular, needs to make sure that we're delivering lean, agile, and speed to the marketplace in order to help execute the strategy. Strategies can no longer be executed over a long period of time, but there's a demand to execute in a more quicker fashion. So if I think about what are the top ways that Brightline has studied that says to bridge that strategy execution gap. And if I look at that, and I hope you can see from the back room, but really the first four are all about coordination, cooperation, alignment. And guess what? That's exactly what PMOs do. That's in our core. And so if I look at each and every one of those, PMOs can contribute to helping bridge that gap. And so I'm not here to suggest that PMOs are going to solve the strategy execution gap. Absolutely not. But what I can tell you is that I think we as PMOs have a tremendous opportunity to be able to provide much more value and close that gap and help our strategy execution. One of the most important decisions that organizations make is how they spend their investments. And I love this quote by Peter Drucker because it really sums up the importance of that decision. It's much, much, much more important to make the right decision on the right projects over executing them what I call the right way. There's much more value. And so one of the best ways that I know to make smarter project selection decisions on this critical decision is through project portfolio management. And project portfolio management has 4 goals. And it can be whether you run predictive, hybrid, or agile, these 4 goals remain the same, and project portfolio management can help every organization. And the goals of project portfolio management are maximize the expected value of that portfolio. Yes, make sure that everything is strategically aligned. I talked about limiting the work in progress, that is, working on the right number of projects, and making sure that we have a balance of our investments across those different dimensions that are so important to us. So where's the opportunity, you ask, for PMOs? Again, pulse of the profession. It tells me that less than 50% of all enterprise PMOs provide portfolio management. And the number is even less for departmental PMOs. So that's a clear opportunity for PMOs to either provide portfolio management or engage with those people who are making project selection decisions to enlighten them to what project portfolio management is and help them make smarter project decisions. And one of the things that I would also encourage, and I have encouraged our project managers, is to understand, again, we're all thinking more, understanding strategic mind, right? We know what we're trying to do as an organization. But it's really important for project managers to really understand that bigger picture and how their project plays a very important part in that bigger picture. And that provides a couple of very important benefits. Number one is that every decision that your project makes, because you make 1,000 decisions over the course of a project, if you're already thinking about that, you're keeping alignment with the strategy. But it also serves a very powerful purpose when it comes to providing a sense of purpose for our teams. And we know how important that is, that now they know what they're doing beyond the project outcomes, but they actually know the bigger contribution. So those are just some of the things that PMOs can do and project managers can do to help do their part in closing that strategy execution gap. Now let's talk about the second opportunity. Mature our value delivery, particularly in PMOs, particularly given that projects are much more complex and there's many more unknowns. So there's a lot of driving factors to the fact that we need to change the way we deliver projects, deliver value, and have methods, right? We have customer expectations. We have increased competition. We have fantastic technologies that we can try to leverage, right? But there's also the increasing need to have speed in our delivery and have a continuous delivery. So over the last couple of years, particularly over the last couple of years, that has made a tremendous shift in the way we work, the way we deliver value. Because now we're working more in cross-functional teams, co-located, or more autonomous and more iterative. And also the way we measure project success. I can remember not so long ago that it was only a couple years ago that a project is successful if it's on time and on budget. Well, I can tell you that's important, but I think what's more important is project outcomes, business outcomes, particularly relying to or aligned to a strategy. And so there are an alphabet soup of different methods that we can employ as project managers and PMOs to be able to deliver value. And so which one's the right one? How do you select the right one? Obviously, that's going to be based upon the project, the characteristics of the project, and the organization. And something that we must not forget is the culture of the organization. So one of the ways that we can look at the different types of methods that we employ is through Synefin framework. Some of you, most of you have probably seen this. But I think it very nicely categorizes the different types of projects that we have out there. And if I look at the lower right-hand corner, I have those obvious projects. Those are more projects that are more government regulated, regulatory, and we need to do those. And those are things that we just have to get off, do, and we normally apply best practice. Now, if I come up in those domains in the Synefin framework, I come to more complicated. Those are projects and things that we need to analyze and figure out. And that's probably more waterfall, the predictive way, right? We need to design and analyze things and put a plan together. And then if I come over to the left, I have the more complex. That's the more iterative. That's where we have to probe and sense and respond. And the reality is that projects are becoming much, much more from the complicated over to the complex. And in particularly Scrum, you might, that's ideal for complex type of projects. There's something called an empirical process, which is transparency, inspection, and adaptation, or something in lean startup, which is about building, measuring, and learning. Doing it in an iterative way. And if I come down to the last bottom left domain, it's about chaotic. That's something where we don't want to have, and that's just, we need to react and see how the action impacts the response. But those top three are just some ways that we can figure out what type of method that we might want to choose. So you're saying that sounds great, but where's the opportunities for PMOs? In the latest Pulse of the Profession, a shocking, only 9% of all PMOs rate themselves and said, yes, we're very, very good at delivering value. That's a huge opportunity. And we all can see in most of our projects, they're going from the complicated into the complex, because less than 50% of all projects being managed out there are using predictive methods. And I can imagine that is only going to continue. So what can we do as PMOs? We see that opportunity. Great. Like any good 12-step program, the first step is to recognize we need to change, right? And so if I think about 2/3 of all PMOs have said, yes, we have been disrupted by technology and the ways of working, but yet only 30% are doing anything about it, we need to recognize that we need to make some changes. And so when I think about, or you can think about, what are the methods to apply, it's about really making sure that what are the characteristics of the project, what is the culture. And one thing that I would say is that particularly when you talk about employing a method, the reality is that projects are not managed by just one business unit. They are cross-business. And you're talking about mini transformations, the way people work. And that's a very big deal. And one of the things that I would also say is, because you're talking about the way people work, the biggest roadblock and the biggest enabler for transformations are what? Executive sponsorship. So it's critical that we have executive sponsorship when we want to change the different methods and employ those methods. And as PMO directors and part of PMOs, you have teams. And it comes down to people at the end of the day. And one of my concerns, and I know the CEOs of around the world have surveyed, they're always saying, our biggest concern is to keep and retain, attract and retain top talent. And so how do we as PMO directors in this age of disruption make sure that we're keeping and retaining talent? What I would suggest is we make sure that we all understand what our purpose is relating to the bigger purpose. right? And that we are practicing agile leadership. We're really providing not beyond just servient leadership, but we have really effective feedback, and we're building a culture where experimentation is necessary. It's not just okay, it's necessary that we actually have a culture of learning and have a feedback loop. So those are some of the things that PMOs can do. What about project managers? What about skills of project managers? What's needed really for the digital age? You're all familiar with the PMI's talent triangle. And in 2018, PMI did a survey of the future of the project manager. And they have something called the digital overlay. And they came up with 6 characteristics or skill sets that are important for project managers. Things like having legal regulatory understanding, data-driven decisions, big data, and collaboration and the like. I think those are all valid. But what I'd like to offer you this morning is my perspective of what's important for project managers, particularly we're talking about the collaboration, small teams working in iterative ways. And my message, or at least my observation, is that soft skills have never been more important because we're working continuous in cross-business teams. We call them product teams. And soft skills, being exceptional interpersonal skills, building relationships. And let me tell you, values matter. Openness, authenticity, trust. These are the things that I believe that are most important going forward. Yes, having an entrepreneurial mind, being open and loving to have new technology, those are important, but for me, it's the soft skills. And I'll just say a couple of things about our story. We started doing digital a couple years ago, more digital projects. And we went through a bit of an identity crisis. The project manager says, we're running Scrum. We need Scrum Masters, not project managers. Where do we fit in? What we found out very, very quickly is that we have an absolutely critical role as part of the core product team. You see, all of our development is offshore. We have onshore Scrum Masters. And our job is to make sure, because we have to coordinate and plan with 28 airlines around the world with sometimes legacy systems, but to do the integration and provide the data that our digital services need requires a lot of project management. And they actually came up with a term for themselves. They call themselves project masters. And that's a combination between a project manager and a Scrum Master. And so this is just one of the ways that we have adapted. Now I want to talk about what is that third opportunity for PMOs. I can imagine every one of you have been through or are going through some sort of transformation. And a transformation, by definition, is about people changing their behavior. It's people that have to change. And so if I look to say, what are we giving our project managers now that we have to be change agents, or we have to be on the edge of change? How are we giving them the skills to manage this change? If I look at the PMBOK, there's a process called integrated change control. Great. That really doesn't help the people side, right? That's about scope, budget, schedule, etc. Yes, there's an agile practical guide in the PMBOK that refers to organizational change management, but I would suggest to you that it's a little outdated, but you have to pay for it, and it's not certainly integrated. And so there's a desperate need, in my opinion, to provide project managers with the basic skills and a framework for the people side of change that we all have to manage. Now, some change management, by the way, it's a discipline. It's the same as project management. It's getting people from the current state to the future state. And so PMOs, 50% of the time, we are on the front line of driving transformations. Some organizations are very fortunate in that you have dedicated change management experts. We're not one of them, and probably 50% of this group does not have them either. And if I look at what PMOs are being asked most to do, what service do we do? Agile. We want more agile. Guess what? That's people changing. Second one is, we want you to be change management. Great. So what is the results if we actually integrate change management, people side of change management, into project management? There's an organization called ProSci, and they've done several studies, and they are dedicated to the people side of change management. And what they found out is that over the years, it's projects that have an excellent change management, people side, have a 6 times more likelihood of meeting or exceeding their objectives than that exact same type of project that has poor change management. So the results are very clear that change management drives results. And so when I think about change, it's about individuals making that individual decision. And so it's probably not very surprising that 70%, according to McKinsey, of transformations do not reach their goals, primarily because of employee resistance. So it's people. And there are many different people type of change management and frameworks out there. These are just some of them. But I can tell you that they all share some common characteristics. Number one, just like project management success, sponsorship is absolutely critical. The second one is to say, why do we need to change and where are we going? Absolutely critical. The third one is really to make sure that we're always communicating and engaging. Again, critical. And that's what PMOs do the best. As well as having, as Carter would say, a leading coalition, right? A group of champions across the organization, because it can never be one person driving that change. So those are some of the common characteristics of all change management frameworks. And I show you one today, which is just one that we kind of like at Star Alliance. It's called the ADCAR from ProSci. And ProSci, by the way, they have 20 years of research on best practices on people side of change management, as well as they partner with approximately 80% of the S&P 500 companies. So this is just one model that I'm not suggesting you take, but it's just a framework for change management. And so what can we do as project or PMOs? It's really to make sure that we provide a structured change management framework, that we are engaging all of our stakeholders in driving change. And it's about executive sponsorship, making sure we have executive sponsorship and sponsorship at the line manager level, and be able to plan for the resistance, because we will get resistance. And if I look at the top contributors to change management, what are they? Okay, it's about sponsorship, not surprising. Dedicated change management, okay, we don't have one of those. But it is just about providing project managers with the skill set, the framework for integrating a people side of change management. So what I'd like to close with is this thought. Yes, there is tremendous opportunity out there with the change that we have taking place. And you may have recognized that all 3 of these opportunities have common value drivers, right? It's about us making sure that we have sponsorship. It's about making sure that we're valuing outcomes over outputs, because that's what we're being asked to do. It's about providing a people side of change management. And it's about project management soft skills have never been more important. So yes, PMOs, project managers, have a very important role in the age of disruption. And I hope that you can take 1 or 2 of these ideas back to your PMO. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John, for a very enlightening presentation. I think we all need to bridge the gap. We all need to mature our PMOs and how we do work. And we just must focus on the people side, as John has said. One point, and I think it would be of interest to all of you, is that how do we do these things in an innovative way, in a new way, to make sure our organizations excel over others, excel over competitors in the market, and do it in a different way that makes it a new practice in the future. I think 15 years ago, they came up with the Agile Manifesto, and now Agile is a practice guide, and you can be certified for Agile. So it became a mainstream kind of practice in project management. That's what we want this award to develop, is that if you come up with a new practice and this practice becomes mainstream in the future, becomes a good practice for everyone to use. I think focusing on benefits is one of the most important issues that we all must look at. Cost and time have become obsolete now. I mean, yes, you need to finish your projects on time and so on, but you need to make sure that you realize the benefits. Now I think we move to a different field.